A desert in Peru holds a message written for the sky. These are the Nazca lines, massive geoglyphs whose true scale only becomes clear from high above. For nearly a century, their purpose has been one of archaeology's most captivating puzzles. This video will show you exactly how a culture without flight or modern tools achieved precision astronomical alignments across miles of barren Earth. We will uncover how straight lines track the solstice sun and why a giant spider might map a constellation. You will see how ancient knowledge of the stars was literally etched into the planet, suggesting a lost science of celestial observation. How did they achieve such accuracy, and what were these giant drawings meant to do? The answers challenge ancient technology and humanity's bond with the cosmos. By the end, you will possess a complete picture of this enigma, from the simple methods of its creation to the profound theories of its celestial purpose. We will confront the possibility of a giant calendar, explore pathways for ritual processions, and question if these forms were meant as messages to the gods. What does it mean for a society to build its identity in alignment with the heavens? To understand the precision, we must first walk the ground where it was achieved. This is the Pampa Colorada, the Red Plain, a vast plateau lifted high above the coastal valleys of Peru. It is a place of profound stillness, shielded by surrounding mountains from the erosive winds that shape most deserts. For centuries, this plateau has lain under a near-permanent high-pressure system, a meteorological coincidence that created an artist's studio on a continental scale. The canvas itself is a geological masterpiece, a dark, uniform layer of sun-baked pebbles coated in desert varnish, a natural patina of iron and manganese oxides. Beneath this dark veneer lies a substrate of lighter-colored sand and clay. The Nazca people did not build these lines up with foreign materials, they revealed them by subtraction. With a simple yet coordinated effort, they would remove the top layer of dark stones, sweeping them aside to expose the pale earth beneath. The contrast is stark, a clean, creamy line against a rust-red background, and in this hyper-arid climate once created, such a mark could last for millennia with minimal change. This was not the work of a nomadic or struggling people. The Nazca culture, which thrived here from around 200 years before the Common Era to 600 years into it, was a society of remarkable stability and ingenuity. Their world was one of intricate textiles woven with dazzling colors, pottery painted with mythical beings and complex scenes, and aqueducts called puquios that tapped underground rivers to green the desert valleys. This was a community deeply connected to its environment, capable of organizing labor and sustaining long-term vision. The lines were not a mysterious anomaly from a lost age, but a deliberate project from a flourishing civilization that understood its land and its skies intimately. They had the social structure to plan, the technical skill to execute, and the environmental wisdom to choose a canvas destined to preserve their work. With this foundation of who they were and where they worked firmly in place, the immediate question becomes not why, but how. How do you draft a perfect straight line that runs for miles over rolling hills, or design a complex hummingbird nearly the length of a football field, without ever seeing your own blueprint from above? The true genius of the Nazca lies not in impossible tools, but in their profound understanding of the materials at hand. To create a geoglyph, they performed a kind of reverse drawing. Teams of workers would carefully gather the dark, iron-rich stones that littered the desert surface, clearing them away in a continuous path. They did not need to paint or build, only to reveal. The canvas was already prepared by nature, a layer of light-colored clay and gypsum hidden just beneath that dark, pebbled crust. By removing the top 12 to 15 inches of stone, they exposed this bright subsurface, creating lines that seemed to glow against the rust-red plain. The tools for this were as simple as they were effective: woven baskets for carrying stones, wooden stakes, and lengths of rope. Imagine a community project on a staggering scale, where the blueprint was a smaller model laid out on a level area, its proportions carefully transferred to the vast landscape using measured chords and aligned sighting poles. This was a feat of social coordination, a testament to a culture that could mobilize and direct labor toward a vision that no single person would ever see in its entirety. The lines have endured for over 1,000 years precisely because the Nazca chose their canvas with foresight. The Pampa is one of the driest places on Earth, where decades may pass without a single drop of rain, and the surrounding mountains break the force of the wind. In another environment, their work would have blurred and faded within a generation. Here, it became permanent. This practical reality reframes the mystery. We are not looking at the work of outside forces or lost super science, but at the deliberate, communal handiwork of a sophisticated people. They possessed all the knowledge they needed to alter their landscape forever. The far more compelling question then becomes not how they moved the stones, but what master plan guided their hands across such an immense space. Yet for centuries, the creators themselves walked in the shadow of their own masterpiece. From the ground, the grand design dissolves into a local mystery. What appears as a faint, cleared path between stones, a simple trail leading toward a distant hill, offers no hint of its greater form. A person standing within one of these lines sees only a shallow trench receding in two directions, its purpose as indecipherable as a single brushstroke viewed an inch from a painting. The full truth of Nazca remained a secret kept by the landscape itself, waiting for a perspective humanity had not yet achieved. That perspective arrived with the hum of propeller engines in the 1920s and 30s. Commercial pilots charting new routes along the Peruvian coast began reporting strange markings on the desert floor below. They spoke of what looked like ancient landing strips, long straight lines that ran for miles, and glimpses of enormous, stylized figures. What had been local knowledge and fragmented trails was suddenly, breathtakingly whole. The aerial view was a revelation that shattered previous understanding. It transformed abstract lines into a coherent gallery of giant art, a sprawling monkey with a coiled tail, a hummingbird with a beak like a spear, a spider, a condor, a strange humanoid figure often called the Astronaut. This was not random land clearing. This was intentional, monumental design on a scale the world had never before documented. The immediate and profound implication was that the Nazca people had created these forms for a viewer who was not on the ground. They had built a visual language meant to be read from the heavens, a communication directed upward. This insight forces a fundamental shift in how we approach the mystery. If the intended audience was above, then perhaps the very language of the message was written in the things above. The lines and shapes cease to be mere art and become potential signs, markers, and signals aligned with the celestial bodies that move across that same sky. The discovery from the air did not solve the puzzle. It gave us the proper lens with which to look at it. It turned our gaze upward to the sun, the moon, and the stars, asking if the desert floor was in fact a mirror of the night sky. This brings us to the second method of unlocking the mystery, the geometric grid itself. Scattered across the Pampa are hundreds of perfectly straight lines, some stretching for over 30 miles without a single visible curve. They cut across dry riverbeds, climb low hills, and vanish over the horizon with an unwavering determination that feels almost mechanical. To the modern eye, they irresistibly suggest runways, a notion that fueled early speculation about ancient astronauts. But the truth, as uncovered by dedicated researchers who walked every inch of that desert, is both more human and more brilliant. The key figure in this decoding was Maria Reiche, a German mathematician who arrived in Peru in the 1930s and would spend the rest of her life measuring, mapping, and protecting the line. Through decades of painstaking work, often funded from her own meager savings, Reiche developed a compelling theory. She proposed that this vast network of lines and trapezoids functioned as a giant astronomical calendar etched into the Earth. Her meticulous survey suggested that many of these long, straight pathways pointed directly toward the precise spots on the horizon where the sun or moon would rise or set during the solstices and equinoxes, the pivotal turning points of the year. Imagine standing at the center of a wide trapezoid as dawn breaks on the June solstice. The long axis of that shape might align perfectly with the first sliver of sun cresting a distant mountain notch, a moment of celestial alignment that transforms a simple dirt path into a sacred sightline. The precision required for this is staggering. To establish such an alignment, Nazca astronomers would have needed to observe the slow, yearly migration of sunrise and sunset points along the horizon with incredible patience, marking a specific position that recurs only once every 365 days. They then translated that celestial marker into a terrestrial line that could be followed by anyone in the community, forever locking that astronomical knowledge into the landscape. This was not about telling the hour of the day, but about marking the season of the year. These lines likely served as ritual pathways. During a solstice or equinox, a procession could walk the length of a line toward the horizon, physically moving in step with the cosmic order. Their journey would culminate at a vantage point or a mound, where the alignment would be visually confirmed as the sun kissed the exact notch the line pointed to. In this way, the community did not just observe the cycles that governed planting and harvest. They actively participated in them, weaving the rhythm of the heavens into the fabric of their society. The desert floor became a monumental clock, its hands made of sunlight and shadow, its purpose to harmonize human life with the universe. But if straight lines could map the sun and moon, what of the giant animal figures that share their desert canvas? Could a spider or a monkey also be a star chart? But the straight lines are only half the story. Alongside those precise geometric pathways, the desert holds another gallery, one filled with life. Etched into the pampa are enormous biomorphic figures, a menagerie of stone that includes a hummingbird with a beak like a dagger, a spider with legs stretched wide, a monkey with an elaborately spiraled tail, and a colossal pelican. These are not random sketches. In the Nazca worldview, the boundary between the earthly and the celestial was fluid, and every creature likely carried a weight of meaning far beyond its physical form. To understand them, we must learn to read their symbolic language. Take the monkey, for instance. In the highland regions that supplied water to the coastal valleys where the Nazca lived, monkeys were not native. They were exotic, powerful creatures associated with the life-giving rains of the Amazon. The monkey's famous spiral tail has led researchers to propose a fascinating connection. Some suggest it mirrors the shape of the constellation known today as Ursa Major, or the Big Dipper, a critical marker in the northern sky. This would tie a mythical, water-bringing animal directly to a permanent fixture in the night heavens, blending ecology with astronomy in a single symbol. Then consider the hummingbird. In the Andes, the hummingbird is often seen as a messenger, a creature that can defy gravity to hover motionless in the air. This remarkable ability might have made it a perfect symbol for the sun at its zenith, the moment at noon when the sun appears to stand still at the highest point in the sky before beginning its descent. Each animal, therefore, could be a multi-layered sign. A pelican, a fisher, might point to a season of plenty from the ocean. The spider, often linked with rain and fertility in Andean myth, could represent a constellation whose appearance heralded the coming of vital water. Interpreting these figures is not about finding a one-to-one match with our modern star charts, but about stepping into a mindset where the landscape was a living map of cosmic stories. The Pampa was not just a calendar for tracking time, but a sacred text written in the shapes of animals and gods, each one a chapter in a narrative that connected the community to the forces that sustained their world. This symbolic layer deepens the mystery, suggesting the Nazca did not merely observe the sky, they populated it with meaning and then brought those celestial stories down to Earth in a form meant to last forever. Yet another layer of meaning may lie hidden beneath the very stones of the desert. While the stars shone above, the most precious resource for the Nazca flowed silently below their feet. In a landscape where rain might not fall for years, survival depended not on the sky's bounty of water, but on its hidden veins. This reality gives rise to a compelling and deeply practical theory, the hydrological hypothesis. Some researchers, combining modern geological surveys with a study of the line orientations, propose a fascinating correlation. They suggest that many of the long, straight lines and trapezoids do not point toward celestial bodies, but instead map the hidden courses of underground aquifers, the subterranean rivers that were the lifeblood of the culture. The famed Puquillos, the sophisticated spiral well aqueducts the Nazca built to tap this water, prove their advanced understanding of these hidden hydrological systems. Could the geoglyphs be the surface-level signature of that knowledge, a giant diagram pointing the way to water? From this perspective, a procession walking a long line might not have been tracking a star, but following a path toward a vital source of water emerging at a distant foothill. The theory beautifully intertwines the practical and the sacred. Water was not merely a resource, it was a divine gift. A line that marked its flow would also be a sacred pathway, a place for rituals of gratitude and appeals for continued abundance. This idea expands further when we consider the concept often called ley lines, though it's important to distinguish the popular idea from the archaeological evidence. The notion is that ancient cultures perceived lines of spiritual energy or force running across the landscape, connecting sacred sites like mountains, springs, and temples. While the existence of such energy is not scientifically verifiable, the observable behavior of ancient peoples often was to create physical pathways between these spiritually significant locations. In this light, the Nazca lines could be seen as monumental expressions of this practice, deliberately constructed sacred roads that connected ceremonial centers, water sources, and astronomical observation points into one interconnected web. The giant animal figures, perhaps representing deities or ancestral spirits associated with rain and fertility, would then be placed at powerful nodes within this network. This hypothesis does not cancel out the astronomical alignments. Instead, it suggests a profound synthesis. The Nazca may have used their celestial calendar to determine the optimal times for water-related rituals. The solstice sun, for example, could signal the time to walk a specific pathway to a ceremonial center to pray for the replenishment of the aquifers. In this holistic view, the geoglyphs become a grand, integrated system for sustaining life. They are at once a map of hidden water, a calendar marking sacred time, and a temple complex built into the earth itself, all designed to maintain a fragile balance between humanity and a demanding, arid world. This leads us to the most enigmatic figure of all, one that seems to stand apart from the animal forms and geometric precision, a being that has fueled the wildest speculation of all. The claim of precision astronomical alignment is not a vague suggestion, it is a measurable fact. To verify it, we must move from wonder to calculation, using the tools of modern archaeoastronomy. Researchers employ theodolites, precise optical instruments, and sophisticated computer software that can reconstruct the ancient sky. They must account for a critical factor called precession, the slow, 26,000-year wobble of Earth's rotational axis. Because of this wobble, the positions where stars rise and set shift imperceptibly over centuries. A line built today pointing to a star would be misaligned in a few hundred years. So the question becomes, to which era do we set our celestial clock? When researchers calibrate their software to the peak of Nazca culture, around 500 years into the Common Era, remarkable patterns snap into focus. Multiple long lines and the central axes of large trapezoids align with breathtaking accuracy to the sunrise and sunset points of the June and December solstices. Some even track the rising of important star groups like the Pleiades, a cluster deeply significant to Andean agricultural cycles. The margin of error is often less than a single degree across miles of terrain. This is not a lucky coincidence. Achieving this required generations of patient observation. Nazca astronomers likely used fixed horizon markers, like notches between distant mountains, to note the extreme northern and southern travel of the sun each year. They then translated that celestial landmark into a terrestrial line, etching a permanent reminder of that cosmic event into the Earth itself. This precision had a profound purpose. It was not for navigation or daily timekeeping, but for sacred timing. It anchored their most important rituals to the immutable clockwork of the cosmos. The solstice was not just a date, it was a moment of power, a hinge between seasons, and the lines provided a physical pathway to walk in harmony with that transition. This ceremonial function finds its ultimate expression not in the straight lines, but in the most complex and mysterious figure of all, a design that seems to weave every strand of this mystery into a single, giant knot. Among the sprawling animal figures, the giant spider offers one of the most detailed celestial maps. Its form is unmistakable, with a compact body and long, carefully positioned legs stretching across the desert floor. But to researcher Phyllis Petluga of the Adler Planetarium, this was more than a simple representation. Through meticulous analysis, she proposed that the spider's design precisely mirrors the constellation Orion, one of the most prominent and recognizable star patterns in the night sky. The spider's elongated body, she argued, corresponds to Orion's distinctive belt, while the arrangement of its legs maps the surrounding stars that form the hunter's shoulders and feet. This correlation transforms the geoglyph from a terrestrial image into a star chart etched into the Earth. The connection deepens with a single, purposeful line that extends from the spider's form. Petluga's work suggested this line does not point randomly, but aligns with the precise point on the western horizon where the constellation Orion would have set during the era of the Nazca. This transforms the entire figure into a kind of astronomical instrument, a permanent marker linking a specific celestial event to a fixed point on the landscape. The choice of Orion would have been profoundly meaningful. In many Andean traditions, this constellation is not seen as a hunter, but as a celestial being intimately connected to water and the life-giving rains. For a culture surviving in one of the driest places on the planet, tracking the appearance and disappearance of a rain-bringing constellation was a matter of communal survival. The spider geoglyph then becomes a layered symbol of astonishing sophistication. It is at once an animal totem, likely holding its own spiritual significance. It is a precise map of a constellation, a snapshot of the heavens frozen in time on the desert floor, and it is a functional pointer, a calendar marker indicating a specific seasonal event, the setting of Orion, that may have signaled a time for rituals pleading for rain or giving thanks for water. This single case study shows us how the Nazca wove together the threads of their world. They observed the stars not as distant lights, but as active forces in their lives. They then used their mastery of geometry and communal labor to anchor those celestial forces into the very ground they walked upon, creating a sacred landscape where every line and figure served a purpose in the great cycle of life. If a spider could hold such complex meaning, what other secrets might be woven into the simpler, more numerous straight lines that crisscross the Pampa? The straight lines and animal figures were not meant to be seen from above, but to be walked upon from below. This brings us to a theory that breathes life into the silent desert, transforming it from a giant calendar into a sacred stage for communal ceremony. Many researchers propose that the primary purpose of the geoglyphs was to serve as ritual pathways, known in the Andean world as sex. The later Inca civilization is known to have maintained elaborate systems of these radiating lines, which connected temples, springs, and mountains into a spiritual map of their empire. The Nazca lines may be a much earlier, monumental expression of the same profound idea. Imagine the scene on the morning of the winter solstice. As the first light touches the horizon at the exact point a long trapezoid points to, a procession begins. Led by community leaders or spiritual guides, people walk in a solemn line along the cleared pathway. Their footsteps trace a route that has been aligned with the cosmos itself. This was not passive observation, it was active participation. By walking the line at the precise moment of celestial alignment, the community physically enacted the harmony between earth and sky, reinforcing their place within the natural order. The destination of these walks gives us another clue. Many of the longest straight lines terminate at small, constructed mounds or natural hilltops that were likely used as ceremonial platforms or shrines. The journey along the line was as important as the arrival, a moving meditation that culminated in a gathering at a sacred place. This practice grounds the astronomical precision in human experience. The lines were not just sighting tools for a few elite astronomers, they were communal infrastructure for spiritual life. This concept becomes even more powerful when applied to the giant animal figures. Consider the massive condor etched into the plain. In Andean cosmology, the condor is a sacred messenger, a creature that soars between the earthly realm and the upper world of the gods. To walk the entire outline of the condor figure in a ritual procession would be an act of profound symbolic meaning. It could be a form of sympathetic magic, whereby tracing the form of the powerful bird, the community sought to invoke its traits, strength, vision, and a direct connection to the divine. They weren't just looking at a symbol, they were embodying it step by deliberate step, weaving their own movement into the permanent artwork. This transforms our understanding of the entire landscape. The Pampa was not a static observatory or a passive map. It was a living, ritual terrain. On specific days dictated by the stars and sun, it hummed with activity, filled with people walking the bodies of spiritual animals, following solar pathways to hilltop shrines, and through their collective movement, maintaining the balance of their world. The precision of the alignments ensured that these ceremonies were performed at the most potent moments, linking human ritual directly to the machinery of the universe. This theory beautifully connects the how to the why, showing us a culture that didn't just watch the heavens but walked with them. The achievement of such precision across miles of terrain is a puzzle of its own. How do you draw a perfectly straight line from one hilltop to another, or ensure a trapezoid points precisely to a solstice sunrise, using only the technology of the first millennium? The answer lies not in lost blueprints or alien tools, but in a profound mastery of simple principles refined over generations. The Nazca astronomers were likely masters of the gnomon, a basic yet powerful instrument. A gnomon is simply a vertical pole stuck into the ground. As the sun moves across the sky, the pole casts a shadow that sweeps in a predictable arc. By carefully marking the tip of that shadow at different times of day, an observer can trace a precise east-west line. More importantly, by watching where the shadow falls at noon over the course of a year, they could identify the longest and shortest shadows which correspond to the solstices. This simple wooden stake, used with patient observation, became a foundational tool for anchoring their designs to the sun's journey. To extend that alignment across the rolling desert, they would have used a technique of sighting. Researchers suggest they employed tall wooden poles called huancas, placed at intervals along the intended line. By standing at one pole and aligning it with the next, and then the next, workers could guide the clearing of stones in a perfectly straight path. even over hills that block the final destination from view. This method turns a massive engineering challenge into a series of manageable, human-scale steps. The true genius, however, may have been in their use of the landscape itself. Generations of skywatchers would have intimately known their horizon, memorizing the exact notches between distant mountains where the sun and moon made their dramatic entrances and exits. These natural features became their permanent, unshakable reference points. To create a line marking the December solstice sunrise, they didn't need complex mathematics. They simply needed to observe that sunrise year after year, note the specific mountain saddle it rose from, and then build a pathway on the ground that pointed directly to that saddle. This was a cumulative science, a body of knowledge passed down through oral tradition and practiced ritual. It was the refined work of a culture that watched the sky with the same focused attention we give to our devices today, not for entertainment but for survival and meaning. Their accuracy was not the result of a single brilliant mind, but the legacy of countless eyes trained on the heavens, translating celestial motion into terrestrial lines with a patience we can scarcely comprehend. This deep generational knowledge raises a final, haunting question. If they built this system to last for eternity, what happened when the knowledge to read it was lost? But the desert holds more than just animals and lines. Among the most enigmatic of all the geoglyphs are the rare humanoid figures, silent giants whose purpose seems to speak directly to us. The most famous of these is a figure etched into a hillside near the main plain, often called the Astronaut. It stands with one arm raised, its head large and seemingly helmet-like, gazing out from the slope. This single image has ignited countless stories of ancient astronauts and visitors from other worlds, a tantalizing narrative of extraterrestrial contact. Yet when we look with the eyes of an archaeologist rather than a science fiction writer, a far more human, and perhaps more profound, story emerges. The figure's oversized head is far more likely a representation of an elaborate ceremonial headdress or mask, a symbol of status and spiritual power. The raised arm could be a gesture of greeting, of blessing, or of calling upon the forces of the sky. This is not a portrait of a space traveler, but of a mediator, a shaman, or a high priest. In the worldview of the Nazca and their Andean descendants, such individuals were the vital link between the community and the cosmos. They were the ones who would have performed the solstice rituals, who interpreted the movements of the stars, and who directed the creation of the lines themselves. Another giant figure, this one on the main Pampa, appears to hold a staff or a club, a classic symbol of authority in the ancient world. These anthropomorphic geoglyphs may be the ultimate signature on the desert canvas. They could be depictions of the very astronomer priests who designed this celestial landscape, immortalized in the same earth they helped to align. They serve as a powerful, humbling reminder. Behind every precise solstice alignment, every sprawling animal figure mapped to a constellation, was not an alien intelligence but a human mind. It was a person who spent a lifetime watching the horizon, who calculated angles using shadows and stakes, and who believed with absolute conviction that by etching order into the desert, they could help maintain order in the universe. These figures pull the mystery back to a human scale. They tell us that the Nazca lines were not a message for someone else out there, but a monumental project of self-definition, a way for a people to literally place themselves within the grand story of the cosmos, with their spiritual leaders standing as eternal guides at the threshold between earth and sky. Beyond the figures and straight lines, the desert holds a quieter, more introspective form of art. Scattered across the Pampa are intricate geometric designs, spirals that coil inward like a nautilus shell, zigzag patterns that mimic lightning, and mazes that look like puzzles drawn on a colossal scale. These are not accidental shapes. They are a universal language found in ancient art from Celtic stones to Hopi pottery, speaking to concepts that transcend any single culture. In the silent vocabulary of the Nazca, these abstract forms may be the purest expression of their cosmic philosophy. A spiral, endlessly turning back on itself, is a perfect symbol for the cyclical nature of their world. It could represent the eternal loop of the seasons they tracked so precisely, the apparent path of the sun through the sky, or the very cycle of life, water, and renewal that their survival depended upon. It is a shape that contains motion and return, a single line tracing the journey of a celestial body or the flow of spiritual energy from the earth to the heavens and back again. Then there are the labyrinthine designs, pathways that fold in on themselves in complex patterns. Unlike a maze, which is meant to confuse and trap, a traditional labyrinth has only one winding path leading inevitably to a center. From ancient Crete to medieval cathedrals, labyrinths have served as tools for pilgrimage in miniature. To walk one is to undertake a symbolic journey, a meditation in motion where the physical act of tracing the path quiets the mind and focuses intention. For the Nazca, these desert labyrinths, some large enough for many people to walk simultaneously, likely served a profound ceremonial purpose. We can envision their use during pivotal moments like a solstice observance or an initiation rite. A young person entering adulthood or a spiritual seeker might walk the entire length of the labyrinth's coiled path. With each turn, the outside world, the vast, open desert, would fall away. The walker's attention would turn inward, the repetitive motion and the isolation of the path creating a trance-like state, an altered consciousness carefully cultivated for ritual. This inward journey mirrored the outward celestial one. As they walked the earthly labyrinth, they might have been symbolically traveling the path of a star or following the sun's descent into the underworld, aligning their own internal transformation with the grand transformations they saw in the sky above. These geometric forms, then, are the abstract heart of the mystery. The straight lines mapped the cosmos onto the land. The animal figures populated that map with living symbols. But the spirals and labyrinths provided the method for the individual to personally navigate that cosmos, to experience its cycles and energies from within. They transformed astronomy from an observation into an embodied psychological experience, making the vast, impersonal movements of the heavens an intimate part of human spiritual life. Her legacy is written not in the lines themselves, but in the spaces she fought to keep between them. The story of the Nazca lines in the modern world is inseparable from the story of Maria Reiche, a German mathematician whose quiet arrival in Peru in the 1930s would alter the destiny of an entire desert. She came initially to work as a tutor, but a chance flight over the Pampas with an archaeologist opened a window onto a mystery that would consume the rest of her long life. Where others saw only faint scratches on a distant canvas, Reiche saw a complex mathematical and astronomical text waiting to be decoded. With little funding and driven by pure intellectual passion, she moved into a small house near the desert edge and began a solitary, monumental task. For decades, she was the guardian of the lines, a figure often seen at dawn or dusk with her theodolite, her notebook, and her broom. That broom was a crucial tool. She would spend hours gently sweeping away the wind-blown dust and stones that threatened to obscure the ancient pathways, a one-woman preservation society acting out of sheer necessity. Her work was a physical and intellectual labor of love, a daily dialogue with the desert. She meticulously measured angles, charted relationships between figures, and slowly built the first comprehensive maps of the geoglyph complex. Her seminal book, Mystery on the Desert, published in 1949, brought the Nazca lines to an international audience and laid out her compelling theory. She argued that the vast network functioned as a giant astronomical calendar, with key lines pointing to solstice sunrises and sunsets, and even to important star groups like the Pleiades. She saw the Pampa as a colossal observatory, a stone record of celestial cycles. while later researchers have refined and sometimes debated her specific alignments, questioning whether all the lines hold precise astronomical meaning. Her true contribution is beyond dispute. Maria Reiche established the first rigorous scientific methodology for studying the site. She transformed the lines from a curiosity into a subject of serious academic inquiry, setting the standard for all future work. Her deeper legacy, however, was one of fierce, unyielding protection. As roads and agricultural expansion began to creep toward the fragile desert canvas in the mid-20th century, Reiche became an activist. She used her own savings, eventually supplemented by book royalties and grants, to hire guards. She lobbied government officials, wrote impassioned letters, and campaigned tirelessly to have the area declared a protected zone. Her advocacy was instrumental in the Nazca lines being designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1994, a status that now shields them from destructive development. Her life became completely intertwined with her work. She never married, considering the lines her family and her purpose. In her later years, even as her eyesight failed and her health declined, her commitment never wavered. She passed away in 1998 and was buried at her request in the town of Nazca, forever a part of the landscape she saved. Maria Reiche's story is a testament to the power of a single, focused individual to change our understanding of the past. She taught the world to see the desert not as a barren plain marked by strange drawings, but as a sacred, scholarly document. Because of her, we do not just wonder about the Nazca lines, we have a framework with which to study them. Her devotion ensures that the questions she spent a lifetime asking can still be answered by generations to come. To truly understand the lines, we must look beyond the silent desert to the bustling heart that gave them purpose. Just a day's walk from the Geoglyphs, nestled in the Nazca River Valley, stood Cahuachi. This was not a city of permanent residence in the traditional sense, but a vast ceremonial metropolis, a spiritual capital built from sun-dried adobe bricks. Its skyline was dominated by over 40 mounds, some rising into stepped pyramids, overlooking wide plazas that could hold thousands. For the Nazca people, Cahuachi was the axis of their world, the destination for pilgrimages and the stage for their most important communal rituals. It was here, amidst the temples and gathering spaces, that the decisions to create the desert drawings were likely made, and from here that the processions to walk them began. The lines did not exist in isolation. They were the extended expression of Cahuachi's sacred authority, physical tendrils reaching out from the ceremonial core into the surrounding landscape. Many researchers now see these pathways as sacred roads or sects, connecting the urban center to vital resources and spiritual landmarks. A long, straight line leading from Cahuachi toward a specific mountain peak might mark a pilgrimage route to a high-altitude shrine. Another line pointing to a distant spring could chart a ceremonial journey to honor a life-giving water source. The geoglyphs transformed the entire Pampa into a ritual map, with Cahuachi as its central, beating heart. During major festivals tied to the solstices or agricultural cycles, the desert would come alive with movement. Imagine a solemn procession departing from the great plaza of Cahuachi, led by priests in elaborate regalia. They would follow one of the cleared pathways, walking for miles across the arid plain in a direct, purposeful line toward a horizon marker. Their physical journey mirrored a spiritual one, tracing a connection their society had literally etched into the earth. Upon reaching a trapezoid's endpoint or a hilltop shrine, they would perform ceremonies, perhaps making offerings to ensure the sun's return or the arrival of water. This practice did more than just fulfill a religious duty. It physically manifested the society's bond with its territory. By walking these lines, the community actively wove itself into the fabric of the land, reinforcing social cohesion and a shared identity rooted in a sacred geography. The lines were not mysterious messages for the sky gods alone. They were the infrastructure of a ritual civilization, the arteries through which the lifeblood of ceremony, belief, and social order flowed from its urban heart out across its entire domain. This perspective shifts the entire purpose of the desert canvas from a tool for observation to a medium for conversation. If the Nazca lines were not primarily for human eyes, but for a divine audience, then every precise alignment and sprawling figure becomes a form of prayer made permanent. The sheer scale of the geoglyphs makes perfect sense under this interpretation. From the human perspective on the ground, the lines are fragmented and mysterious, but from the vantage point of a mountain deity or a celestial spirit looking down, the message would be clear and monumental. The Pampa transforms from an observatory into a giant altar, an open-air temple where the community could conduct its most important dialogues with the forces that govern their world. The precision astronomical alignments take on a new, powerful meaning within this framework. They are not just calendar markers, they are delivery mechanisms. Imagine a long, straight trapezoid that points directly to the spot where the sun rises on the summer solstice. On that specific morning, as the first light travels the length of that cleared pathway, it might be seen as channeling the sun's energy or directing a collective plea directly to the sun deity itself. The line acts like a ceremonial pointer, aiming the community's devotion at the appropriate celestial recipient at the exact moment of that god's greatest strength or attention. In this way, the Nazca were not merely tracking the gods, they were engaging with them, using the landscape itself to ensure their messages were received loud and clear. The choice of imagery supports this idea profoundly. The animal figures are not random. They are likely depictions of sacred beings or powerful allies in the spirit world. A giant spider associated with rain and fertility, etched into the desert, could be a permanent invocation, a request for life-giving water addressed directly to the deity it represents. A hummingbird, a messenger, might be a plea for communication or a thank offering for a message received. By creating these figures on a scale only visible from above, the Nazca were essentially saying, "This is for you." They were illustrating their myths, displaying their reverence, and showcasing their understanding of the cosmic order for a divine audience. This theory also elegantly explains the endurance of the project. A calendar or a ritual pathway might need maintenance, but a message to the gods, once correctly delivered and inscribed into the earth, was eternal. It stood as a perpetual testament of faith, a covenant between the people and the powers above that required no renewal, only remembrance. The entire endeavor becomes an act of profound hope and negotiation. A civilization using the only canvas vast enough to capture the attention of the sky, pleading for the rains to come, the sun to return, and the balance of their fragile world to hold. The desert's ancient silence is now broken by the sounds of the modern world. For over 1,000 years, the hyper-arid climate acted as a perfect preservative, but the very stability that protected the geoglyphs is now under siege from 21st century pressures. Unpredictable weather patterns linked to broader climate shifts occasionally bring torrential rains to this historically dry region. When these rare downpours occur, they carve gullies across the Pampa, washing away the carefully arranged stones and blurring the crisp edges of the figures. This is a new kind of erosion, one the Nazca engineers never had to design against. Another invisible threat comes from the air itself. Dust and particulate pollution from industrial activity and mining operations in the surrounding areas can settle on the dark desert stones. Over time, this thin film can diminish the vital visual contrast between the dark surface and the lighter cleared lines, slowly fading the artwork from view. The most immediate dangers, however, are physical. The Pan-American Highway, a major transportation artery, was built directly through the Nazca Pampa decades ago, before the full scale of the archaeological treasure was understood. It slices across the tail of the lizard geoglyph and sits perilously close to other figures, with the vibrations from constant traffic posing a subtle, ongoing threat to the fragile soil structure. Illegal encroachment by squatters seeking land for agriculture or settlement leads to unauthorized clearing and damage. Perhaps most heartbreaking are the scars left by off-road vehicles, whose drivers, ignoring protective barriers, have driven across the lines, leaving tire tracks that cut deep into the ancient surface and can take years to naturally repair if they ever fully do. The fight to protect this legacy is a continuous, multi-front effort. Peru's Ministry of Culture, aided by international experts and organizations like UNESCO, coordinates a vigilant preservation campaign. This includes aerial and ground surveillance to spot new damage, the installation of physical barriers and warning signs around the most vulnerable figures, and ongoing public education programs to build local and national pride in the site as a non-renewable treasure. Researchers now use advanced technologies like drone mapping and satellite imagery to monitor the slightest changes in the landscape over time. Every solstice sunrise that now illuminates a line is a testament not only to ancient precision but to modern dedication. The race is to ensure that the celestial calendar carved into the earth does not become a ghost, fading under the very skies it was built to honor, so that its mysteries remain alive for every generation that looks up and wonders. The true scale of the Nazca canvas is only now coming into full view. While the work of pioneers like Maria Reiche was built on foot and from small aircraft, a new era of discovery has dawned, one that sees the desert with eyes beyond human capability. This is the age of satellite archaeology, where technology peers down from orbit and reveals secrets the desert has held for centuries. High-resolution satellite imagery, capable of discerning minute differences in soil composition and vegetation, acts as a giant scanner passing over the Pampas. It can detect the faintest traces of a line where the stones were once cleared, patterns so eroded they are invisible to anyone standing beside them. Drones flying at lower altitudes capture incredibly detailed three-dimensional maps, allowing researchers to study the topography of the lines and figures in ways that flat photographs never could. But perhaps the most revolutionary tool is LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. Mounted on a plane or drone, LiDAR fires millions of laser pulses at the ground. By measuring how long each pulse takes to bounce back, it can construct a precise digital model of the surface, effectively stripping away any sparse vegetation to reveal the bare earth beneath. This technology is like giving the desert an X-ray, seeing through the thin veil of time to the original artwork. The results of these high-tech surveys have been nothing short of astonishing. They have confirmed that the known geoglyphs are just the most prominent features in a vastly more crowded landscape. In recent years, a team from Yamagata University in Japan, combining satellite data with on-the-ground fieldwork and even artificial intelligence trained to recognize patterns, announced the discovery of over 140 new geoglyphs. These are not giant spiders or monkeys, but often smaller, more abstract forms, humanoid figures, serpentine shapes, and intricate geometric designs that had been completely missed by previous generations of researchers. Each one is a new data point, a fresh clue in the ongoing investigation. This expanding map reveals something crucial. The Nazca phenomenon was not limited to a few grand statements. It was a dense, layered text written across the entire region. The new discoveries show clusters of lines and figures in areas once thought empty, suggesting specific zones for different types of rituals or community groups. They reveal alignments between smaller geoglyphs and larger ones, hinting at a hierarchical or connected system of meaning. For astronomers and archaeologists, this wealth of new data is transformative. With hundreds of additional lines and points to analyze, they can perform more robust statistical tests on the astronomical alignment theory. Does a newly discovered cluster of lines also point to solstice events? Do the smaller figures align with the rising of specific stars, The larger the dataset, the clearer the patterns, or the more compelling the exceptions become. This technology does more than just find new drawings. It allows us to see the context in which they were created. We can now analyze how the lines interact with the entire terrain, tracing their relationship to ancient footpaths, water sources, and settlements with a precision Reiche could only dream of. The promise is a holistic understanding, where the celestial purpose of the lines is woven back into the daily life and ritual geography of the people who made them. Every new geoglyph identified from space is a silent voice recovered, adding another sentence to the longest story ever written on Earth. Long before the Nazca walked the Pampa, their cultural ancestors were already inscribing meaning onto the landscape. The Paracas culture flourished along the southern coast of Peru from around 800 years before the Common Era to about 100 years before it, a vibrant society that laid the spiritual and artistic foundations for what was to come. To understand the Nazca impulse to draw for the sky, we must first look to the Paracas hills. While the Nazca worked on a flat desert canvas, the Paracas chose the slopes of coastal foothills, creating enormous stylized figures known today as the Paracas candelabra. This massive trident-like design, over 500 feet tall, is etched into a sandy hillside overlooking the Bay of Pisco. Unlike the Nazca lines, it was clearly meant to be seen from the ocean and the land below, a towering symbol visible for miles. This was not an isolated doodle, but a declaration. It tells us that the concept of monumental geoglyphs, of altering the Earth itself to create a lasting emblem, was already a deeply rooted tradition in this region centuries before the Nazca lines reached their peak. The Paracas did not need to invent the idea of large-scale Earth art. They inherited a cultural language and then chose to speak it in a new, even more ambitious dialect. The connection deepens when we look at what the Paracas held most sacred, their textiles. The dry desert climate preserved breathtaking burial wrappings, cloths woven with such intricate detail and vibrant color that they feel alive. These textiles are not decorated with simple patterns, but with elaborate depictions of mythical beings, often shown holding severed heads or transforming into birds and serpents. Many of these figures are studded with symbols that researchers interpret as stars, constellations, and radiant suns. For the Paracas, cloth was a portable cosmos, a way to wear their mythology and their astronomy. A shaman or leader wrapped in such a garment literally embodied the celestial order, becoming a walking map of the spirit world. This profound intertwining of art, astronomy, and spiritual power was the cultural air the Nazca breathed. When the Nazca culture emerged, they did not appear from a void. They were the inheritors of this rich Paracas legacy. They took the concept of the hillside geoglyph and transferred it to the vast, flat tableland of the Pampa, a move that fundamentally changed its audience. They scaled the imagery from the portable, personal cosmos of woven cloth to the monumental, communal scale of the desert floor. The mythical beings on Paracas textiles find echoes in the Nazca biomorphic figures, suggesting a continuity of symbolic language. The Paracas candelabra, a giant marking on a hillside, can be seen as a direct precursor to the Nazca lines, a proof of concept that such giant works were possible and meaningful. This continuity is crucial. It shows that the Nazca lines were not a bizarre anomaly or a project born of isolated genius. They were the magnum opus of a long-standing regional tradition, the ultimate expression of a cultural impulse that for centuries had sought to weave human life into the patterns of the mythic and the celestial. The Nazca did not suddenly decide to talk to the sky. They were continuing a conversation their ancestors had begun, using a larger voice and a grander stage. But does this celestial pattern hold up to scientific scrutiny, or are we simply seeing what we want to see in the desert? This is the critical crossroads where wonder meets mathematics, where the romantic idea of ancient star maps confronts the hard question of statistical significance. With hundreds of lines crisscrossing the Pampa, skeptics raise a compelling point. If you draw enough random lines on a vast landscape purely by chance, a handful of them will inevitably point toward some significant horizon point, like a solstice sunrise. It is a law of probability, not a proof of purpose. So how do we move beyond this reasonable doubt? How do we separate a genuine, intentional alignment from a lucky accident? The answer lies in moving from individual examples to comprehensive pattern analysis, a task for which modern technology is perfectly suited. Researchers now employ sophisticated statistical software to build a digital model of the entire Nazca Pampa and the ancient sky above it. They feed in the precise compass directions, or azimuths, of every single mapped line and geometric figure. The software then runs thousands of simulations, essentially asking a simple but powerful question. If these same hundreds of lines were scattered randomly across this same terrain, how many would, by pure coincidence, point to a major celestial event like a solstice or the rising of a bright star? The results of such studies are revealing. They show that while not every single Nazca line has a confirmed, precise astronomical target, the distribution is not random. There are clear, statistically significant clusters of lines that align with the four cardinal solar events: the summer and winter solstice sunrises and sunsets. The probability of so many lines pointing to these exact four horizon positions by sheer luck is incredibly low. This statistical evidence is the bedrock of the modern astronomical thesis. It tells us that the Nazca were not just occasionally lucky, they were systematically precise. They repeatedly and deliberately anchored their most important designs to the sun's extreme turning points. This rigorous analysis does more than just support the idea, it refines it. It allows researchers to identify which lines are most likely part of the intended celestial calendar and which might have served other, perhaps hydrological or ceremonial, purposes. It transforms the theory from a collection of intriguing anecdotes into a demonstrable pattern etched across miles of desert. This statistical lens is a form of respect for the Nazca builders themselves. It takes their work seriously enough to test it with the most objective tools we have, and in doing so, it confirms that their precision was not a fantasy we project onto the past, but a measurable reality they engineered into the earth. The desert whispers its patterns, and mathematics has learned to listen. This sacred messenger's wings are spread wide across the desert, a terrestrial anchor for one of the most profound ideas in Andean thought. The giant Condor geoglyph is more than a bird, it is a bridge. In the cosmology shared by the Nazca and their descendants, the universe was divided into layered worlds. There was the earthly realm, Cahuachi, the world of humans and living things. Above it existed Pacha, the upper world of the sun, moon, stars, and deities. The Condor, soaring higher than any other creature, was the sacred messenger that could travel between these spheres, carrying prayers up and omens down. To etch this being into the earth was to create a permanent portal, a fixed point where communication with the divine was not just possible, but invited. Yet the Condor's connection to the heavens might be far more literal than a symbolic role. Look up on a clear, dark night in the southern hemisphere, and you will see the Milky Way arching across the sky in a breathtaking river of light. For the Andean peoples, this was not just a collection of stars, it was a celestial road. They called it Mayu, the heavenly river, and saw it as the pathway along which spirits traveled and where the very weather was born. Within its luminous band, they did not just see random specks of light, they saw dark patches, clouds of interstellar dust that blot out the starlight behind them. Where we might see empty space, they saw distinct shapes, a celestial bestiary now known as dark cloud constellations. One of these dark patches is seen as a llama, another as a toad, a fox, or a serpent. The entire Milky Way was a mirror of the earthly world, populated with shadowy animal spirits. This brings us back to the desert condor. Some researchers studying the geoglyph's specific orientation propose a fascinating alignment. They suggest that during key times of the year, perhaps during the dry season when the Milky Way is most prominent in a certain position, the condor's outstretched wings and body align with the great celestial river's path across the horizon. The geoglyph on the ground becomes a direct reflection of the constellation in the sky, a perfect echo across dimensions. In this interpretation, the condor is doing double duty. It is both the messenger and the message. It is a specific map anchoring the celestial river to a particular point on the landscape, and it is a universal symbol of the soul's journey. Just as the condor flies between worlds, so too might the human spirit, upon passing from this life, be believed to travel along the starry pathway of the Mayu. The geoglyph, then, transforms the Pampa into a cosmic railway station, with the condor as its central monument, pointing the way for spiritual travel. This layering of meaning shows the incredible sophistication of Nazca symbolism. A single form could operate on multiple levels at once, a ritual pathway to be walked, an astronomical marker for a season, a depiction of a revered animal, and a guide for the ultimate journey. The desert was not just a calendar or a temple, it was a complete cosmology written in stone and sand, a permanent reassurance that the community and its ancestors were forever part of a much larger celestial story. The same celestial stories were not just for the desert, they were for the home. While the geoglyphs speak in a monumental public voice, the Nazca expressed their cosmos on a more intimate scale through the objects they crafted and used every day. Their polychrome pottery, fired in the hues of the desert sunset, serves as a vibrant archive of their beliefs. These vessels are not decorated with simple geometric patterns, but with a rich iconography of mythical beings, often shown in transformation. A deity might have the body of a human and the head of a bird, its limbs outstretched as if in flight or dance. Scattered around these figures, artists frequently painted small, precise dots with radiating lines, unmistakable symbols for stars, or long-tailed streaks representing comets streaking across the heavens. These are not random decorations. They are direct, personal illustrations of the celestial forces that governed life. A jar used for storing water or ceremonial drink might feature a rayed face, a likely depiction of the sun god, ensuring that every pore was a reminder of the ultimate source of warmth and growth. The pottery makes the cosmic personal, bringing the vastness of the sky down to the table, the altar, and the hand. This artistic language extends to their textiles, though fewer have survived the centuries compared to the spectacular cloth of their Paracas ancestors. The fragments we do have reveal a continuation of that sacred visual vocabulary. Woven into the fabric are patterns that echo the forms on the pottery and the ground, stylized birds, felines, and fish that likely held astral associations. A repeating zigzag motif in a border could symbolize lightning, a powerful force from the sky, or perhaps even the Milky Way itself as a shimmering, serpentine path. These textiles clothed the people, wrapped sacred objects, and adorned spaces, literally enveloping the community in a fabric of cosmic symbolism. When a spiritual leader wore a mantle woven with star symbols, they became a living embodiment of the night sky, a walking conduit between earth and heaven. This consistency across media is the corroborating evidence we need. The same spider that is a giant geoglyph might appear as a painted motif on a bowl. The same condor that spans the desert might be woven into the corner of a tapestry. This tells us that the ideas behind the lines were not a secret knowledge held by a few, but a shared cultural language understood by all. The pottery and textiles transform our understanding of the desert drawings from an isolated mystery into part of a complete, integrated worldview. Astronomy for the Nazca was not a detached science practiced by specialists in isolation. It was the very framework of their reality, a narrative that explained their place in the universe, from the grandest solar cycle to the design on a drinking cup. The geoglyphs were the public, permanent expression of this cosmology, meant to align the community with celestial order. The portable arts were the private, daily reinforcement of those same principles. They show us a people for whom the boundary between art, religion, and science did not exist. Every crafted object, whether a mile-wide drawing or a hand-held pot, was a sentence in the same story, a story about a world alive with spiritual forces, where the patterns in the sky were mirrored in the patterns of life, and where humanity's role was to maintain that sacred harmony through ritual, artistry, and awe. The desert floor itself may have been envisioned as a great, unfinished tapestry. Among the many interpretations of the Nazca lines, one of the most elegant and intimate theories comes not from astronomy or hydrology, but from the very fabric of their daily life. Anthropologist Claude Chapdelaine proposed a fascinating connection, seeing the sprawling geoglyphs not as a calendar or a map, but as a monumental loom. The Nazca were, without question, master weavers, inheriting and advancing the breathtaking textile traditions of their Paracas ancestors. Their social identity and spiritual concepts were literally woven into cloth. So what if their largest project was an extension of that same craft, but on a scale fit for the gods? Look at the structure of many line centers. You see a small mound or a cleared area from which dozens of perfectly straight lines radiate outward in a fan-like pattern. To an eye trained in traditional weaving, this is a familiar sight. It closely resembles the setup of a backstrap loom, a simple yet ingenious device used across the Andes for millennia. In such a loom, the longitudinal warp threads are stretched taut between two bars, one attached to a fixed point and the other to a belt around the weaver's own back. The weaver's body becomes part of the tool, leaning to adjust the tension. The radiating Nazca lines mirror these warp threads with uncanny precision, anchored at a central point and extending outward across the Pampa. The geometric trapezoids and rectangles that cluster around these centers could then be seen as sections of a giant, planned textile pattern, waiting to be filled in. This idea transforms our perception of the landscape entirely. It suggests the Nazca saw the Pampa not just as a canvas, but as an active workspace. The straight lines were the foundational warp. Celestial events, like the sun tracing its path or a constellation rising, might have been seen as the shuttle carrying the weft thread back and forth, slowly creating the pattern over the course of a year or a lifetime. In this view, the gods were the master weavers, and the community's rituals, the walking of the lines, were a form of participation in that cosmic creation. This theory beautifully bridges the gap between the monumental and the domestic. Weaving was primarily, though not exclusively, a woman's craft, a central pillar of household and cultural life. To imagine the entire desert as a loom elevates that fundamental, gendered domestic act to a sacred, communal level. It proposes that the Nazca conceptualized their world as a cosmic cloth being woven into existence, with human life and ritual as integral threads in the design. The precision of the lines ensured the cosmic pattern remained true, and the animal figures could be the finished motifs emerging from the fabric. This interpretation does not cancel out astronomical alignments, it gives them a profound new context. The solstice sun wasn't just a marker, it was the divine needle pulling a golden thread across the warp. This perspective weaves together the practical skill of weaving, the artistic drive for pattern, and the cosmological need for order into a single, breathtakingly cohesive vision of a universe in the making. The precision of the geoglyphs mapped a cosmos the Nazca could also experience from within. To fully enter their mindset, we must acknowledge a powerful tool they likely used to bridge the earthly and spiritual realms: psychoactive plants. Archaeological evidence from across the Andean region confirms the ancient and ceremonial use of entheogens, substances taken to connect with the divine. Among the most significant was the San Pedro cactus, a tall, columnar plant native to the coastal deserts and highlands of Peru. For thousands of years, its use is documented in the art and artifacts of preceding cultures, and traces of its key compound, mescaline, have been found in ancient burials and ritual paraphernalia. This was not a casual practice but a sacred technology, in the context of a carefully prepared ritual guided by a shaman or spiritual leader. These plants could induce profound altered states of consciousness. Within these states, the boundaries of perception dissolved. A shaman might experience a sensation of flight, a journey out of the body, often described as a spirit flight or visionary travel. In this condition, they could perceive themselves as soaring above the desert, seeing the lines in their full, luminous glory from a perspective that mirrored the gods. They might commune directly with celestial beings, the animal spirits depicted in the geoglyphs, or the ancestors receiving guidance, diagnosing illness, or pleading for rain. This experiential layer adds a vital dimension to our understanding of the lines themselves. Imagine a ritual participant having ingested a prepared brew, standing at the edge of a vast trapezoid as the solstice sun begins to rise. The physical alignment is precise, but their perception is magnified. The cleared pathway might appear to glow with an inner light, a radiant road leading directly into the heart of the rising sun. The geometric shapes could pulse with energy, and the distant animal figures might seem to stir with life. The Pampa was not a static map, but an interactive portal. Walking the lines in such a state would have been a multi-sensory pilgrimage, where every step was a movement through both landscape and visionary space. This perspective does not contradict the astronomical alignments, it completes them. It shows us that the geoglyphs served a dual purpose. They were, on one level, a meticulously engineered celestial calendar, anchoring the community to the solar cycle. On another, they were a set of tools for transcendent experience, designed to facilitate a direct, personal encounter with the very cosmic forces they depicted. The lines allowed the Nazca to do more than observe the cosmos. They provided a pathway to actively participate within it, to travel its dimensions in a state of ritual ecstasy. This blurring of observation and participation was likely the ultimate goal, a way to weave the human spirit directly into the fabric of the universe they so carefully charted upon the earth. Yet the very forces that gave the lines their permanence also held the seeds of their end. Around 600 years into the Common Era, the rhythm that had sustained the Nazca world began to falter. The climate, which had been their steadfast ally, turned unpredictable. Evidence from ice cores and geological layers tells a story of dramatic upheaval. A series of powerful El Niño events likely struck the coast, events far more intense than the occasional weather pattern we know today. These would have brought torrential rains to the desert, rains that did not nourish but destroyed. The same dry riverbeds that framed the Pampa would have become raging torrents, scouring the land, overwhelming the ingenious Puquio's aqueducts, and washing away agricultural fields in the valleys below. This was often followed by a cruel reversal, prolonged droughts that stretched for years, leaving the already damaged infrastructure parched and useless. The result was a cascade of hardship. Food systems collapsed, social order strained, and the ceremonial heart of their world, Cahuachi, lost its purpose as a pilgrimage center. The great ceremonial city was gradually abandoned, its adobe temples slowly melting back into the earth from which they were made. With this central authority and communal focus fragmented, the grand project of etching new messages into the desert ground to a halt. The last geoglyphs were completed, and the desert fell silent, not with a dramatic crash, but with the slow fading of a tradition whose time had passed. The lines, however, were not erased. They remained, a vast and puzzling heirloom on a landscape that no longer had the key to fully understand them. Later cultures who moved through the region, including the mighty Inca who forged an empire centuries later, likely saw these markings as vestiges of a sacred past, places of power left by the ancestors. They may have incorporated them into their own ritual geographies, walking the ancient paths but perhaps without knowing the precise celestial conversations they were built to host. This abandonment is what makes the mystery so poignant. It froze a moment of high cultural achievement in time, like a clock that stopped at the very height of its precision. The sophisticated practice of sky mapping did not gradually evolve into something else. It seems to have dissipated, leaving behind only its monumental signature. This discontinuity is the core of the enduring enigma. We are left with a system of incredible complexity, a language of astronomy, hydrology, and art, but without the living voice of its speakers to explain its final, complete meaning. The lines resist a single, definitive explanation because they were never meant to be a single statement. They were the evolving scripture of a people in dialogue with their world, a dialogue that fell silent, leaving only the elegant, unanswered questions written across the desert floor. We can now journey through time without leaving the room. Modern planetarium software offers a form of digital time travel, allowing researchers to roll back the celestial clock to the exact era when the Nazca gazed upward. By entering the precise coordinates of the Pampas Colorada and accounting for the slow precession of Earth's axis, these programs reconstruct the night sky as it appeared over the desert 1,500 years ago. It is a meticulous process, generating a star map for a specific date, perhaps the evening of a winter solstice. The next step transforms this from an abstract sky into a direct test of the alignment theory. Researchers superimpose the precise compass bearings, or azimuths, of the geoglyph lines onto this virtual cosmos. The result is a breathtaking visual demonstration. On screen, a long, straight line etched into the desert floor extends its path upward, and there, at its virtual endpoint, hangs a brilliant star like Sirius, the brightest in our night sky. Another line might point directly to the tight, glittering knot of the Pleiades cluster, a group of stars deeply significant to agricultural societies across the ancient world for marking the planting season. The distinctive 4 stars of the Southern Cross, a constellation never visible from most of the Northern Hemisphere, aligns with other pathways. This is not guesswork, it is a precise, repeatable experiment. These simulations allow us to stand virtually beside a Nazca astronomer. We can witness the moment a particular line, perhaps leading to a ceremonial mound, frames the rising of a specific star group at a pivotal time of year. The connection ceases to be a theoretical possibility and becomes a visual fact. The desert floor no longer feels like a random collection of scratches, but a deliberate, point-by-point reflection of the heavens above. This digital evidence provides a powerful corroboration of the statistical studies, offering a window into the mindset of the builders. They were not just marking the sun and moon, they were capturing the entire celestial sphere, weaving the fixed stars into their monumental calendar. The simulations show us that their precision was holistic, encompassing the cyclical journey of the sun, the phases of the moon, and the timeless positions of the starry backdrop. Each aligned line becomes a frozen moment of observation, a celestial event captured in earth and stone for eternity. That same aerial view which revealed the lines to modern science also sparked one of its most persistent myths. In the 1960s, as images of the long, straight trapezoids began circulating globally, a captivating but flawed narrative took hold. The idea was simple and sensational. The straight lines looked like runways, therefore they must have been runways built for or by visitors from other worlds. This ancient astronaut theory captured the public imagination, suggesting humanity's past required an extraterrestrial explanation. Yet this interpretation collapses under the weight of practical reality and profound disrespect for the culture that created them. The desert surface, while hard-packed, is far from a smooth, solid tarmac. It is a layer of loose stones over softer earth, a surface that would shift and rut under any substantial weight, let alone that of a hypothetical spacecraft. More importantly, this theory commits a grave error. It strips the Nazca people of their own genius. It looks at a monumental achievement born from generations of observation, sophisticated social organization, and deep spiritual belief, and declares it impossible for humans alone. This is not archaeology, it is a dismissal. It ignores the entire cultural context, the pottery depicting celestial motifs, the proven construction methods with stakes and ropes, and the compelling alignments with solstices and stars that we can still measure today. The ancient astronaut idea is at its core a form of modern arrogance. It projects a 20th century fascination with flight and technology onto an ancient landscape, failing to engage with the vastly different but equally rich framework of meaning that guided the Nazca. Their purpose was not to host visitors from the stars, but to communicate with the powers they believed resided there. The lines were a sacred interface, not an interstellar airport. Embracing the extraterrestrial runway myth might feel like expanding the mystery, but in truth, it shrinks it. It replaces the complex, awe-inspiring story of human ingenuity with a simplistic science fiction plot. The real wonder lies not in imagining alien architects, but in comprehending how a community without written language, without metal tools, and without flight could conceive of and execute a plan of such precise, enduring grandeur. Their accomplishment stands as a powerful testament to the human capacity for patience, cooperation, and cosmic observation. To credit aliens is to miss the point entirely. The most extraordinary thing about the Nazca lines is that they are unquestionably, magnificently human. The creation of the lines was an act of community as much as it was an act of faith. To move the stones for a single trapezoid, let alone an entire spider, demanded a shared vision that transcended any individual. This immense labor was likely organized through a system of reciprocal obligation, a practice deeply rooted in Andean culture known as mita. Different family groups or clans would have contributed their labor as a form of social duty, perhaps during the dry season when agricultural work slowed. The project site would have been a hive of coordinated activity, with some teams clearing stones, others hauling them to the edges, and skilled surveyors sighting the lines with their stakes and cords. This was not slave labor, but a communal investment in a symbol of their collective identity. The very act of building together, of sweating toward a goal no single person could see completed, forged powerful bonds. It turned abstract social ties into a tangible, shared achievement that everyone could point to on the landscape. The process itself taught lessons in cooperation, patience, and hierarchy. As leaders emerged to direct the work and specialists applied their knowledge of geometry and astronomy. The finished geoglyph was more than a drawing. It was a monument to the society that built it, a permanent record of their ability to unite for a common purpose. This function transforms our understanding of the lines from passive symbols into active social engines. They were a mechanism for turning a collection of people into a cohesive civilization, with a shared history literally etched into the ground they walked upon. The ritual processions along these paths served to renew that bond year after year. When the community gathered to walk a solstice line, they were not just honoring the sun, they were performing their own unity. Each person, from the highest priest to the youngest initiate, moved in the same direction, following the same sacred path laid down by their ancestors. Their synchronized footsteps along the precise alignment visually and physically demonstrated their place within a larger order, both cosmic and social. The line became a thread stitching the individual into the fabric of the whole. This experience would have been profoundly reinforcing. It translated the abstract idea of community into a sensory reality, the feeling of shared movement toward a common horizon. In a world without mass media or written constitutions, these rituals and the geoglyphs that enabled them were the social contract made visible. They showed every participant that they belonged to something greater than themselves, a society capable of aligning itself with the heavens. The lines, therefore, stand as one of humanity's most ambitious experiments in social engineering. They were a tool for building consensus, for managing resources and labor, and for creating a lasting legacy that would remind future generations of the power of collective action. In the end, the greatest alignment the Nazca achieved may not have been between a mound and a star, but between the individual heart and the communal spirit. The impulse to draw on the earth is a story told across continents. Far from the Peruvian desert, on a grassy hillside in southern England, a giant horse carved into the chalk has galloped for over 3,000 years. The Uffington White Horse, a stylized figure nearly 400 feet long, is visible for miles, a communal emblem of a Bronze Age tribe likely aligned with solar movements. Across the Atlantic, in the Colorado Desert of California, the blithe intaglios present colossal human and animal figures scraped into the dark desert pavement, creations of the Mojave and Quechan peoples that may have marked ceremonial sites or clan territories. These global traditions reveal a profound and universal human behavior, the desire to transform the landscape itself into a canvas for identity, belief, and memory. Each culture, from the creators of the Atacama Giant in Chile to those behind the Sajama lines in Bolivia, worked with the materials and meanings of their own world, yet they all shared a common partner in their endeavors, the vast dome of the sky above. Many of these earthworks incorporate celestial alignments, serving as seasonal markers or pathways for rituals that connected the community to cosmic cycles. This comparative view is essential, for it prevents us from seeing the Nazca lines as a bizarre outlier. Instead, it places them within a grand, global tapestry of human expression, where people everywhere have sought to write their stories large enough for the horizon and the heavens to read. What this comparison ultimately highlights, however, is not the similarity, but the exceptional nature of the Nazca achievement. While other sites may have a handful of figures or lines, the Nazca Pampa contains hundreds, an entire library of geoglyphs with an astonishing variety of forms, from precise geometry to intricate zoomorphs. The hyper-arid climate acted as a perfect preservative, freezing these creations in a state of clarity that eroded chalk horses or desert intaglios cannot match. This unique combination of scale, diversity, and preservation allows us to see something at Nazca that is only fragmentary elsewhere, the potential for a fully integrated system. The Nazca did not just create a few aligned markers, they engineered what appears to be a cohesive celestial and ritual landscape. Their use of a flat, unified plane as a canvas allowed for a density and interconnection of designs that hilly terrains like Uffington could not support. Their focus on animal figures ties their astronomy directly to a rich symbolic world of myth and ecology. By looking at what other cultures did, we can better appreciate what the Nazca did differently. They took a universal human impulse and refined it to an extraordinary degree, crafting not just individual messages to the sky, but what may have been an entire language for conversing with the cosmos, written across 100 square miles of sacred ground. Preserving a message for the sky requires protecting it from the very eyes that wish to see it. The Nazca lines are a pillar of Peruvian heritage and a powerful economic engine, drawing visitors whose support funds both local communities and ongoing research. Yet this necessary attention creates a profound and delicate conflict. Each small plane that circles overhead for a better view contributes to vibrations and emissions that subtly degrade the fragile desert canvas over time. Even the most careful tourist standing on an observation tower leaves no physical mark, but the collective human presence alters the micro-environment around these ancient works. The most direct threat, however, comes from those who bypass barriers entirely, whose footprints or vehicle tires can erase a line that has endured for 1,500 years in a single, careless moment. This is the core ethical tension, a struggle between the right of the world to witness wonder and the absolute duty to safeguard it for the world to come. How do you share a treasure without loving it to death? The answer lies in redefining the experience of discovery itself. Strictly regulated flight paths and altitude limits minimize aerial harm, while advanced monitoring technologies like drones and satellites can track erosion without constant physical intrusion. Perhaps the most promising paths forward are digital. Immersive virtual reality experiences can offer anyone, anywhere, the breathtaking perspective of soaring above the hummingbird or walking the solstice line without a single grain of sand being disturbed. Enhanced visitor centers can use detailed holograms and interactive displays to convey the scale and precision of the geoglyphs, telling the full story of their creation and meaning. These approaches shift the focus from physical access to intellectual and emotional connection. They acknowledge that the true value of the Nazca lines is not as a passive spectacle, but as an active, irreplaceable chapter in the human story. Their greatest purpose for the future may be to remain intact, a pristine archaeological text from which each generation can learn to ask new questions. The ultimate act of respect is sometimes to look from a careful distance, ensuring the desert's silent conversation with the cosmos continues for millennia more. The desert holds patterns that whisper of a deeper, hidden order. Among the sprawling animal figures and long straight lines, some of the most quietly complex designs are the spirals. These coiled forms, often found at the very centers from which lines radiate outward, are not simple doodles. When researchers measure them, they reveal a startling mathematical elegance. Some of these spirals conform to precise geometric ratios, their curves expanding in a progression that mirrors the Fibonacci sequence or approximates the golden ratio. This is the same mathematical pattern seen in the unfurling of a fern, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, and the shape of a nautilus shell. It is a pattern of growth and harmony found throughout the natural world. The question, of course, is whether the Nazca intentionally encoded this advanced mathematics into their desert art, or if the alignment is a beautiful coincidence born from an intuitive sense of pleasing proportion. The debate is ongoing, but the very possibility forces us to reconsider their capabilities. It suggests a culture that did not just draw shapes, but understood the underlying principles that make those shapes resonate with a sense of natural order. This mathematical layer adds a profound new dimension to the geoglyphs. It moves beyond representation into the realm of abstract thought. The spirals may have functioned as more than just symbols. They could have been practical, computational tools. Imagine a shaman or astronomer standing at the center of one of these spirals. By walking its coiled path, counting its turns, or observing how shadows fell across its curves at different times of year, they might have been able to track cyclical time, calculate lunar months, or predict seasonal changes. The spiral itself, with its endless return to a central point, is a perfect metaphor for the cycles they were observing, the eternal loop of the sun, the seasons, and the stars. This practical use could have blended seamlessly with ritual. A ceremonial dance that traced the spiral's path would physically enact the turning of the cosmos, a moving meditation on the nature of time and return. The dancer's footsteps would weave a temporary human pattern into the permanent geometric one, merging the community with the universal principle the spiral represented. This reveals a stunning synthesis in the Nazca mind. The same form could be a sacred symbol, a mathematical equation, a calendar, and a dance floor. It shows us that their desert canvas was not merely a picture book of animals and lines. It was also a treatise on geometry, an exploration of the fundamental patterns that govern life and the universe. The presence of these mathematically sophisticated spirals hints at a layer of intellectual pursuit that complements the spiritual and the practical. They sought not only to map the stars and speak to the gods, but to understand the very architecture of creation itself, etching its timeless blueprints into the earth for all who could learn to see. The earth itself remembers what the stones do not say. While the geoglyphs speak of celestial precision, the very soil they are etched into holds a different record, a chronicle of the climate that shaped every decision the Nazca made. Paleoenvironmental scientists act as detectives of the deep past, sifting through layers of dust and decay. They analyze ancient pollen grains preserved in dry lakebeds, which reveal what plants thrived in different eras. They study the composition of soil layers and examine fossilized rodent middens, the nests of ancient pack rats that meticulously collected seeds, leaves, and other materials, creating tiny time capsules of the local environment. This evidence builds a startlingly clear picture. The centuries of peak geoglyph construction did not occur in a constant, unchanging desert. They unfolded during a period of relative climatic stability, yes, but one that was far from peaceful. This stable aridity was brutally punctuated by catastrophic weather events, the immense El Niño oscillations of the ancient world. These were not the mild disruptions we track today, but planet-altering convulsions. For the Nazca, an El Niño event meant the sky would open in a terrifying deluge. Torrents of water, unimaginable in a land where rain might not fall for a decade, would cascade down from the Andes, scouring the desert plains. These superfloods were agents of both creation and destruction. In their wake, they left carved gullies and washed away fields, but they also performed a vital, hidden service. They recharged the deep underground aquifers, the hidden rivers of the desert that were the true source of life. This environmental reality transforms our understanding of the lines. Suddenly, the long, straight pathways pointing toward distant mountain peaks take on a desperate, practical urgency. Those mountains were not just horizon markers for the sun, they were the source of the catastrophic, life-giving rains. A line aimed at a specific peak could be a ritual pathway, a ceremonial arrow shot toward the origin of the water, a form of sympathetic magic intended to plead for or give thanks for the deluge. The geoglyphs become part of a sophisticated ritual technology for managing a resource more precious than gold, a technology for negotiating with a capricious and immensely powerful natural world. This data grounds the lofty astronomical theories in inescapable ecological truth. The Nazca were not stargazers in an ivory tower. They were survivalists in a fragile land, and their celestial knowledge was a tool for resilience. By aligning their rituals with the solstices and the stars, they were attempting to sync their human community with the larger, unpredictable cycles of a world where the sky could bring either blistering drought or devastating flood. Their genius was in connecting the two, using the predictable clockwork of the heavens to try and influence the terrifyingly unpredictable behavior of the weather. The desert was their laboratory, the lines their experiment, and their survival was the result they hoped to measure. The path forward is not a single road, but a web of intersecting disciplines. To truly hear what the desert is saying, we must listen with many different kinds of ears. The era of the solitary researcher, like Maria Reiche with her theodolite and broom, has given way to a new model of discovery, one built on collaboration. Imagine a single question, such as the purpose of a particular trapezoid. An archaeologist examines the pottery shards and ceremonial remains at its endpoint. An astronomer calculates its alignment against the ancient solstice sun. A geologist analyzes the soil composition beneath it, searching for traces of ancient water flow. An anthropologist consults oral histories from descendant communities, looking for echoes of old practices. A digital modeler then weaves all these threads into an immersive simulation, allowing the team to walk the line in virtual space, testing their hypotheses against a reconstructed past. This is the future of Nazca research, a conversation between sciences that treats the Pampa not as a singular puzzle, but as a complex ecosystem of meaning. The greatest breakthroughs will happen at these intersections, where celestial data meets hydrological maps and where archaeological finds illuminate ancient star lore. This collaborative spirit is our most powerful new tool, allowing us to approach the lines with a humility that matches their complexity, acknowledging that no single field holds the entire key. Key questions remain stubborn and brilliant, guiding this collective effort. First, we still do not know the full extent of the system. Each new LIDAR survey or satellite analysis reveals more faint lines and buried figures, suggesting we have only mapped the most prominent chapters of a much longer text. How far does this network truly stretch? Second, while we can statistically link lines to solstices, the connection between specific animal figures and specific constellations remains more elusive. We have compelling cases like the spider and Orion, but can we definitively match the monkey, the hummingbird, or the pelican to stars in the Nazca mythological sky? This requires a deeper fusion of astronomy with a nuanced study of their art and iconography. Third, there is the profound question of transmission. How was this precise knowledge of alignments passed down over generations without a written language? Was it through rigorous apprenticeship, through ritual reenactment, or through songs and stories that encoded celestial mechanics in poetry? Each of these open questions is a doorway, and walking through it will not lead to a simple answer, but to a richer, more nuanced understanding of a living intellectual tradition. The methods to pursue these mysteries are becoming ever more sophisticated. Widespread LIDAR surveys promise a complete, millimeter-precise topographic map of the entire region, revealing every subtle terracing and forgotten pathway. Advanced statistical models will sift through this colossal dataset, identifying patterns of alignment and placement that are invisible to the human eye. Perhaps most importantly, researchers are placing greater emphasis on ethnographic analogy, working respectfully with living Andean communities whose cultural memory and worldviews preserve threads of ancient thought. The concepts of sex or sacred pathways and the reverence for mountain deities and water sources offer a vital lens through which to view the Nazca landscape. This is not about projecting modern beliefs onto the past, but about understanding the enduring cultural framework that shaped how people in this region relate to their environment and the cosmos. One thing is certain, each discovery will complicate the story, not simplify it. A new geoglyph might contradict an existing theory about alignment patterns. A deeper analysis of soil might reveal that a line built for astronomy also perfectly follows a hidden aquifer, blending purposes we thought were separate. This is the gift and the challenge of the Nazca lines. They resist a single, grand unifying theory because they were never meant to be one thing. They were a dynamic, evolving project of a civilization talking to itself, to its gods, and to the very forces of nature. Their enduring power lies in this multifaceted mystery. They stand as a permanent testament not to a solved equation, but to the boundless human drive to look at the vast, indifferent sky and the sprawling, silent earth and insist on drawing a connection. They remind us that our quest for meaning is itself a kind of alignment, an eternal effort to find our place in the universe by leaving a mark, however grand or subtle, that says we were here and we wondered. The desert holds its secrets not in a single answer, but in a constellation of possibilities. Our journey across the Nazca Pampa reveals a landscape far more than random lines in the sand. It is a sophisticated, multi-layered text written in earth and aligned with the stars. We have walked with the builders, understanding the simple, brilliant tools of stakes and ropes that turned communal effort into mile-long precision. We have looked upward with their astronomers, measuring how straight lines track the solstice sun, and how a giant spider might map the constellation Orion. We have traced the ceremonial pathways that connected their great city of Cahuachi to distant mountains and hidden water, weaving the fabric of society into the very ground they walked upon. The true genius of the Nazca lies not in any one of these discoveries, but in their breathtaking integration. Art, science, religion, and social order were not separate categories for them, but threads in a single, magnificent tapestry. The geoglyphs were their loom. The precise astronomical alignment provided the sacred timing. The animal figures offered a symbolic language of myth and ecology, and the act of construction itself forged a powerful communal identity. This was a holistic system for survival and meaning, a way to navigate a fragile world by synchronizing human life with the grand cycles of the cosmos. While a single, definitive purpose may forever elude us, that is perhaps the point. The enduring power of these lines is their beautiful, frustrating complexity. They stand as a profound monument to a fundamental human urge, the need to look at the vast, silent sky and the sprawling earth and insist on drawing a connection. They are a testament to patience, to generations of watchful eyes recording the horizon, and to the belief that by etching order into the desert, one could help maintain order in the universe. So what do you think was their primary purpose? Was it a giant calendar, a map of sacred pathways, a series of messages to the gods, or all of these woven together? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this exploration of ancient mysteries captivated you, subscribe for more journeys into the unknown.